Welcome and Shalom Aleichem to Torah Yerushalayim, Tafshin Pei Aleph. I stand here today together with thousands of you watching me now, looking back at what we had last year. Just 1 year ago, literally Erev Yom Kippur like we are this year, with 2,200 Jews coming together in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh in order to prepare and make the Yom Kippur more meaningful. Together with 35 Rabbanim that came together to inspire, we were successful in creating what now is known as Torah Yerushalayim. Torah Yerushalayim is dedicated in the loving memory of David and Norma Fund by their incredible children. David and Norma, people that I knew and was so dear to my heart and so dear to the OU. Having this event in their memory really means a tremendous amount to us. Standing here today, about to open what's going to be 3 days of incredible inspiration and incredible shiurim that are going to turn who we are into different people in 3 days from now, is something very, very special, especially considering we're in Aseret Yemei Teshuva. I can't but think of two of the many stories that people came over to tell me after Torah Yerushalayim last year. I had a lady that came over to me at 10 o'clock at night last year as she's walking into the next year. And she said, Avi, I came at 8:30 in the morning and I said to my husband, you know something, let's go for a couple hours. She's standing there at 10 o'clock at night and she said, Avi, I just can't leave. Every shiur is just incredible. It made me feel incredible. I can't but think of the phone call that I got the morning after Yom Kippur. And she tells me, Avi, I want you to know that my tefillos this year in Yom Kippur were on a completely different level than ever in my life, and I'm 69 years old. Those stories brought us to the decision that we could already book the Ramada literally days after Torah Yerushalayim was over last year. But God had different plans. God didn't want us gathering in the Ramada this year. And we have a COVID-19 coronavirus that's here in the world today that is not allowing us to gather together physically. And the thoughts went through our minds whether it's right or wrong to do Torah Yerushalayim this year, whether we should do it virtual or we should not do it virtual. But it's the inspiration that we saw that we said we have to do Torah Yerushalayim again. But I must be honest. There's an additional element that was the determining factor for myself and my incredible staff that told us that we have to do Torah Yerushalayim and we have to make it longer this year. And that was the understanding that so many people are not able to gather in Yerushalayim at the Kotel for Slichot this year, are not able to come to Yerushalayim to be here with Chagim like they always would, are not able to go to shul, whether it's in Eretz Yisrael or it's in America or around the world, are unable to go to Slichot in shul, are unable to hear shofar like they are usually used to hearing it. And therefore, for them, we have to create a more impactful and an updated Torah Yerushalayim that's going to be for 3 days of inspiration. 3 days of a deeper understanding of what Teshuva is about. 3 days of a deeper understanding of what it means to be connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. 3 days of understanding what it means to be coming to the land of Israel, of living in the land of Israel, like so many are moving to Israel now. 3 days where we're going to be looking at so many elements of what it is to be a Jew, what it means to be in Yerushalayim or a Jew around the world. And hopefully in 3 days from now, we are all going to be much more connected and much more prepared for an unbelievable Yom Kippur B'ezrat Hashem. a Yom Kippur that I think we all know what we're davening for this year. If we stood last Rosh Hashanah and last Yom Kippur and asked ourselves, what are we davening for as individuals and what are we davening for as a nation? I'm sure we would have gotten many, many answers. One thing's for sure is that we are all going to be united in our tefillos this year. We are all going to be asking for very, very similar things. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu this year has taught us what really counts in life. What are the meaningful elements of our families, elements of our friends, our neighbors? How important it is where we live. These are the things that we all learned this year. We all learned not to take things for granted. And Be'ezrat Hashem this Yom Kippur, we're all going to be standing. After these 3 inspirational days, after Shabbos Teshuva that's coming up, and Be'ezrat Hashem with an unbelievable Yom Kippur, where our Kadosh Baruch Hu will be listening to our tefillot, and Be'ezrat Hashem giving us a year full of health, full of prosperity, full of connections, and full of Be'ezrat Hashem, a speedy and complete redemption. It is a true honor to stand here today and do 2 things. First of all, to thank the most incredible staff in the world, the staff of OUisrael. Every single one of you are my family, and every single one of you have taken upon yourself to move Klal Yisrael forward and take care of the children of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I can't thank you enough for that. I also want to thank our colleagues of the OU in New York that have worked with us on making sure that this is going to be a global event. Thank you for making sure that we can inspire as many Jews as possible. And last but definitely not least, I want to invite and introduce my boss, Rabbi Moshe Hauer. Rabbi Moshe Hauer became my boss on May 1st, 2020, literally just a few months ago. And those of you that can imagine what it means to take a position like this as the executive vice president of the OU worldwide during a corona pandemic, it's not easy. The OU is an organization that is a very face-to-face and very close organization. And when suddenly everybody's working from home and all the thousands and thousands of teenagers at risk and teenagers in NCSY and around the world that we're working with, suddenly everything has to be done over the network. It makes an organization very different. When suddenly our rabbis in our shuls and our educators on campus and educators everywhere are suddenly doing everything from a distance, it made our jobs much harder. As you all know, the OUisrael Center shiurim and programs all went online. And our numbers have quadrupled because this room that we're standing in right now, the OUisrael Center, the space is limited. But on the internet, endless bandwidth. So thank God we're seeing an endless amount of more Jews coming and sitting and learning Torah through the OUisrael Center shiurim that are online. Rabbi Hauer took upon yourself a lot by becoming the executive vice president during these times, taking responsibility of the worldwide OU, together with Moshe Bain, Alan Fagan, who just ended his job, and Rabbi Dr. Josh Joseph. You took a tremendous amount upon yourself. And the same way you turned B'nai Jacob Chariot Zion congregation in Baltimore after 26 years into a family that is constantly feeling as one and constantly doing good for Klal Yisrael and constantly connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we already see the tremendous difference that you're doing here at the OU, and therefore we wouldn't start Torah Yerushalayim with anybody else but Rabbi Hauer. Thank you.
It's truly a zechut, it's truly a privilege to join you here today for this outstanding gathering, Torah Yerushalayim, during these important days, Ben Kesel Asor, during the Aseret Yemei Teshuva, as we come together. We come together to learn Torah, to learn about Teshuva, and to elevate ourselves in anticipation of the Yom Hadin. The Pasuk says, "Az nidbru yirei Hashem ishal re'eu, vayakshev Hashem vayishma, vayikasev sefer zikaron lefanav, yirei Hashem u'lechoshvei shema." We all know that during the Unesana Tokef prayer, which we say on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, when we speak about the nature of the divine judgment of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we say as part of the tefillah, "V'siftach sefer hazichronot." You will open up the book of Zichronot, the book of memories, of recollections, the book of our actions. And this verse, "Az nidbru yirei Hashem ishal re'eu," when the God-fearing speak with each other, and they get together with each other to speak about matters of yirat shamayim, of fear of heaven, of trying to do better, of trying to be better. So Hashem listens, vayikatev sefer zikaron lefanav. It gets recorded in that sefer zikaron. So in this beautiful event, Torah Yerushalayim, brought together by OUisrael under Rabbi Berman, when we all get together, Yirei Hashem, striving to be Yirei Hashem, striving to be God-fearing, getting together to discuss and to try to make ourselves stronger and elevate ourselves. The book of Zichronos is wide open. It was open Rosh Hashanah. It remains open, and through our conversation, through our learning, through our attempts to elevate ourselves, Hashem is listening. Vayakshev Hashem vayishma, vayikatev sefer zikaron lefanav. It'll be recorded, God willing, scribbling away the efforts that each of us, that all of us, are making to elevate ourselves in our yirat shamayim. May it be a zechus, may it be a merit for us, for all of the Jewish people. There are verses which we say, which are very associated with the process of Teshuva and with the requests of Hashem that we make during this time for His kindness. Throughout the days of Slichot, Yom Kippur, several times, we open the Aron Kodesh and we say, "Shema koleinu Hashem Elokeinu, chus v'rachim aleinu, v'kabel b'rachamim u'v'ratzones tefilaseinu. Hashivenu Hashem melecha v'nashuva, chadesh yameinu kekedem." Two verses. The second one explicitly about Teshuva, asking Hashem to bring us back, to restore us, to restore our days, kekedem, like the earliest days, like the days in Gan Eden, mikedem. But the first verse, Shema koleinu, taken from the line of our tefillah that goes by that name, Shema koleinu Hashem Elokeinu chus v'rachim aleinu v'kabel b'rachamim u'v'ratzones tefilaseinu. We ask Hashem to listen to our voice. And what I would like to explore with you today is that phrase. To listen to our voice, we understand. What does it mean, chus v'rachim aleinu? What is the nature of that request? Rachem, we further understand. Rachem means to have mercy. What does it mean, chus v'rachem aleinu? There are some who understand and translate chus as just another term for mercy. Maybe it means pity, have pity on us and mercy on us. Another term, something of the same thing. But if we look at Maftir Yonah, we look at the book of Yonah that we read in the waning hours of Yom Kippur, we will see a new and a critical meaning to the word chus, that it doesn't simply mean pity, it doesn't simply mean mercy. In the closing words, in the closing verses of Yonah, Yonah has come to the city of Nineveh. He's given them the word, the warning of Hashem. Nineveh listened. Nineveh changed itself, transformed itself, and Hashem decided not to destroy it. As we know, to Yonah's consternation, to Yonah's disappointment. And he's there outside the city. The sun is beating down. Vayomer Hashem atoch hasta lakikayon, Hashem brings for him a kikayon, a gourd that grows and provides him with shade over his sukkah. And then, as quickly as it comes, it wilts, it disappears, it shrivels up, and it goes away. And Yonah's there in the beating sun, and he's upset, and he's hot, and he wants to die, as the verse says. Vayomer Hashem, and Vayomer Elokim, and God says, El Yonah, Hahetev charoch ala kikayon. Are you justified in your angry about the kikayon? And Yonah affirms, yes, absolutely. Hahetev charali ad maves. Absolutely, it is worthy. My anger is worthy and justified. Vayomer Hashem, Atoch chasta ala kikayon, asher lo amalta bo. You chasta. Let's use the classic translation. You had pity on the kikayon, on the gourd, that you didn't toil to create it. You didn't grow it. Shebin lailo hayo bin lailo avad. It was born one night, over one night, and then gone the next. Vanilo achusal ninveho iragdolah. And I shouldn't have pity on the city of Nineveh, the great city that has in it more than shtei mesrei ribo adam, more than 12 multitudes, more than 120,000 people. You had pity on the kikayon, so I have to have pity on the city. Now, did Yonah really have pity on the kikayon? Is the expression of Yonah's upset or concern in the case of the loss of the kikayon anything to do with his concern for plant life, for this tree being lost? Not at all. Yonah valued the kikayon. Yonah valued this despite the fact that he had invested nothing in it previously. It wasn't something that he had worked on. Something which you work on, of course you value. But here, he hadn't even invested in it. But nevertheless, he saw and he appreciated its value. Atoch chasta ala kikayon. I'll read to you a few words from the commentary of the Malbim on this verse. Mevuar etzli sheyesh hevdel bein chusa uvein yeser l'shonos k'mo chamol rachem. Yes, the term chusa means something else than other terms of mercy, like chemla, rachmanut, shachusa hu mitzad tzorcho el hadavar. When we speak about being chas, we're speaking about a need for it. I need this. I value it. And he brings a beautiful illustration, kemo ve'einchem al tachos al klechem. When Yaakov was instructed by Paro, come to Mitzrayim, come here to join your son Yosef, just leave everything. Let your eyes not concern yourself with your furnishings, with your other items. Just come, travel light, get on the road, come here to Mitzrayim. Your eyes shouldn't have mercy, shouldn't have compassion for your furnishings. Leaving them behind, Yaakov Avinu would feel bad. My poor furniture, how do I leave it here abandoned? No, don't worry about it. Don't value it. Don't consider it something that you have to spare. You'll come here, Tuv kol eretz Mitzrayim lefanecha. What I'll give you is going to be so much better than anything you leave behind. Don't care about it. Don't think it has any worth to you. And so Hashem says to Yonah, you know, you value that kikayon, despite the fact that it was not something that you conceived of, that you built, that you created, but you valued it because it was there for you. And I created mankind. I created this city. I created these multitudes of people. I value them, and I don't want to see them disappear. That's the message which is given to Yonah there at the climax of the story. The last words, literally the last words of that Maftir Yonah in those waning hours of Yom Kippurim. Hashem valued the city of Nineveh, and so he didn't want it to go away. Chasta. When we say, Shema koleinu Hashem Elokeinu, listen to our voice, Hashem, our God. Chus v'rachem aleinu. We're not just finding different words as a nebuch, as some kind of pathetic being that says, Hashem, have mercy on me, have pity on me. Yes, we ask Hashem for compassion. We realize we need compassion. And in that we say, Rachem aleinu. But there's something else that we do as well. And that is, we stand up and we ask Hashem to value us, to cherish us. Chus v'rachem aleinu. Value us. We do not want to just disappear. We don't think you want us to disappear. You created us, you sustained us, lazman hazeh, to this time, because you see in us something worthy, something which makes us a valuable presence, a valuable investment. And so we turn to Hashem and say, if that's the case, spare us. Not just because of mercy, not just because you feel bad for us, but because we would be a terrible thing to waste. I want to share with you a story, which is more than a story. I read it in a book that was published just recently, a few months ago. The name of the book is Just Love Them. It's a book about an outstanding mechanech, an outstanding educator, who our family had the privilege to have a connection with, Rabbi David Trenk, Zichrono Livracha. Rabbi Trenk was a legendary mechanech, a legendary educator. I'm sure many of you have, even if you haven't read the book, heard of him or met him or encountered him. He had a yeshiva, he was leading a yeshiva in Adelphia, New Jersey for many decades, and then he had his own yeshiva, Moreshes Yehoshua. Rabbi Trenk was an educator for young men who made it as his place, as his specialty, to reach out to young men who didn't quite find their place in the regular system. He wasn't limited to that. He was also a presence where many, many people encountered him in Camp Monk. Camp Monk, which was, establishment and fine, and many, many outstandingly successful in every way, in every scholastic measure, young men came under his loving care and guidance and inspiration there. But his main avodas hachaim, his main work in life, was done in his educational framework, in the school and the yeshiva in which he taught, which was known, the Talmudical Yeshiva of Adelphia, but which was known, the Talmudical Academy, I think, of Adelphia, but which was known as Adelphia. And before it became much more common, as in our time of plenty, to have many such institutions, Adelphia was the place in its part of society, of the Jewish society, and Rabbi Trenk was legendary, and rightfully so, as an outstanding mechanech of this type. He was a wonderful person. But the story I want to share with you isn't just a story. You could call it a derech hachinuch, a way of educating, or you could even call it a derech hachayim, a way of life. A Talmud, a student, came to the high school of Adelphia. He was a young man who had always thought that he was a wonderful boy. He had gone through elementary school and middle school, passed through everything, never gave a teacher a difficult day in his life. Always did okay, always did fine. And then it came time for him to apply to high school, to high schools. And he applied, and he went to various high schools for application to try to get into the high school. And one after the other, they got sweet and apologetic letters of rejection. Because what this young man didn't know was that academically he wasn't so strong, and the places to where he applied chose not to accept him. Finally, the Les Berera, Shmuel, without any choices left, Shmuel enrolled in a place that would take him, in the Adelphia yeshiva. And he came to study there in Adelphia with Rabbi Trenk. And Rabbi Trenk asked Shmuel right there at the beginning if he would learn with him, if he could learn with him a little bit each day. And he said, yes, sure. What a privilege to learn with the Rebbe. And the Rebbe took out a Gemara Brachos, and he learned with him the Gemara in Brachos and Daf Chav Ches Amud Aleph. What's the Gemara in Brachos? The Gemara there tells a story, a well-known story, about the day that there was a dispute between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yoshua that had reached there had been many, but it reached a certain climax, and the sages felt that Rabbi Gamliel had to be removed from his post as the head of the yeshiva. And he was replaced by Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, as we all know, was a young man at the time, and yet aged magnificently to fit the bill, to fit the position. Quickly, he aged to fit the position. When Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah became the head of the yeshiva. So the Gemara famously says, "Osu hayom silkuhu l'shomer haPesach." On that day, they got rid of the gatekeeper. In the days of Rabbi Gamliel, there had been a gatekeeper watching entry into the Beis HaMedrash. He now let anybody come in. Rabbi Gamliel only he announced a Talmid she'ein tocho kabaro, a student who isn't as clear inside and out, sincere through and through, already developed, refined, through and through, al yikonis, should not enter the Beis Medrash. But in the day of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, when he took over, he made a big change, and he took away that requirement, that entry requirement, and he let everybody in. And the Gemara says two opinions about how many benches were added to the Beis Medrash on that day. One of them says 400, one of them says 700. There was a huge influx of additional students now that the barrier to entry was lowered. Havekochalsha daite de Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel felt bad. He said, Amar dilma chas v'shalom manati Torah mi Yisrael. Heaven forbid, did I withhold Torah from the Jewish people? Look at all these people who have now come to learn. They weren't coming because of the barrier I had erected to their entry. Rabbi Gamliel was shown in a dream, chatzven chiyure, white jugs filled with ash, intimating or indicating that now you see all these people here, they're empty suits, they're nothing there, they're like empty jugs filled with nothing, filled with ash. Don't feel bad. There are bigger numbers, but there's no quality. And concludes the Gemara of Elohi, but it's not true. Hahili suve date hude echazulei. Yes, he was shown that in a dream, but just because Hashem didn't want him to feel bad. There was no purpose in him feeling bad about this anymore at this point in time. But these weren't empty suits. These weren't jugs of ash. These were valuable people. The Gemara goes on to say that there wasn't any question that was raised in the Beis HaMedrash in that day. With that new dynamic of all of those Talmidim, those students, those not so worthy students there in the Beis Medrash, there wasn't a question that went unresolved. There was a revolution in Torah because more people came in. Rabbi Trenk learned that Gemara with Shmuel. And he just told him the story. There was a barrier to entry. There was a Beis HaMedrash of the Jewish people that they didn't let people in because they didn't think that they were worthy. And boy, was that a mistake. When Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah lowered the barrier and let them in, look what happened. Oh, you think it was nothing? And then Rabbi Trenk, who could be very expressive and could scream, he screamed and he said, V'loihi, it wasn't true that they were empty, that they had nothing to them. It was just to make Rabbi Gamliel feel better, but it wasn't true. Those multitudes that entered, they had great value. Beautiful message. Here was this young man. He came to this yeshiva probably dejected, probably feeling like he was a loser, like he wasn't worth that much. But look, Adelphia will take anybody. Rejected and rejected and rejected. He didn't value himself. And Rabbi Trenk said to him, boy, were they wrong. Boy, were those places that turned you away wrong. You have much to add. You have much value. It's a nice story, but I didn't really tell you the story yet. Rabbi Trenk learned with Shmuel every day. And he learned with him the same Gemara in Brachos, the same story, with the same climax every single day. Every single day he told them the story about all those Talmidim, all those students who were turned away from the Beis Medrash. And every day he told them the ending about what a mistake it was. And that anybody who would say that they didn't really add value, it's just trying to make somebody who did it already feel better. But everyone adds great value. He learned it with him every day, day after day after day. I can't tell you for how long. That's not just a story. That's a derech hachinuch, it's a derech hachayim. For each person to understand, to have that understanding reinforced, to be made to understand that they have great value. You know, it's awfully hard for us to turn to Hashem and say, Hashem, value us, if we don't first value ourselves. And it's often an isayon, it's often a challenge. So often the barrier to tshuva, the barrier to trying to improve, is a sense of despair or a sense of our own lack of worth. There's a famous commentary of the Rambam. I hope it's famous. It should be famous. The Rambam, in the end, towards the end, Perek Vez, Mishnah Gimel, and Pirkei Avos, the Mishnah says, I think it's Rabbi Shimon says, Al tihi rasha b'fnei atzmecha. Don't be a rasha, don't be a wicked person in your own eyes. And the Rambam wrote just a line. Im yidmeh ha'adam atzmo pachos. If a person views themselves as someone less, as someone, we say it in our vernacular, apachos, right? Someone who's something lesser and not worthy, when they do something wrong, they won't take it seriously. They don't consider their actions to be significant. Why fix it? Why try to do better? Will I really matter? Chus v'rachim aleinu, we ask Hashem to value us. But really, in a certain sense, we also have to value ourselves. And it's the tefillah which we say, not throughout Yom Kippur, but in Ne'ilah, and that climactic tefillah after Mincha, after Yonah, after Yonah's Mishnah, after Yonah's last words, where we say to the Rabbanu Shalom, that you do not desire Mos Harasha, you do not desire the death of the wicked, but you rather want that they should return from their ways, v'choy, and that they should live. Ato hivdalta enosh meirosh, v'takireu lamod lefanecha kim yomer lecha matifal, etc. And we say, Rotza ato b'tshuvas harishayim ve'in ato chafetz b'misasam. You want the tshuva of those who have done poorly, those who have done bad. You don't want them to die, as it says, and mor alehem chayani neum Hashem Elokim im echbotz b'mos harasha kim b'shuv rasha midarko l'chaya. Do I want the rasha to die? No. I want them to come back. I value them. I value them. We don't always realize our own value. Famous medrash, which tells that even the greatest of the Jewish people, Aaron HaKohen, had he realized how the Torah, Vayikosef Sefer Zikaron Lefanav, that it would be recorded forever for posterity in the Torah, how he came out to greet Moshe Rabbeinu, V'ruach v'samach b'libai, he will see you and he will rejoice in his heart. And Aaron came, and he rejoiced. But say Chazal, had he realized the significance of what he did, had he realized that it would be recorded forever, he would have come out with tupim and macholos, he would have come out with a parade, with an orchestra to demonstrate his appreciation for Moshe Rabbeinu. We never view ourselves and our impact as significant enough. I know some might say sometimes we view ourselves as being too significant, but the Yirei Hashem, the God-fearing, that get together, that come together during the Aseret Simei Teshuva with an effort, with a sincere effort to grow and to make ourselves greater. Sometimes our greater pitfall is our sense of insignificance. And chus, and to value ourselves, is a critical beginning. So, to this point, we turn to Hashem. We ask him to value us. To ask him to value us in a way that is meaningful, that is consistent, we have to reflect within ourselves and see our own value. See that there's something precious here that Hashem wouldn't want to go to waste. Chus v'rachem aleinu. Value us deeply. But let's take this one step further. In the strategy of tshuva, in the strategy of trying to gain for ourselves a positive response. Because you know that Chazal teach us in different places and in different ways the power of midah keneged midah, of the measure for measure approach when we approach Hashem. For instance, the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, which says, Kol ha'mavir al midaisav mavir le'al kol peshav. Someone who themselves is forgiving, so Hashem is forgiving of them. If whenever anybody does something to me, I'm a stickler. I want them to do it exactly right. If I don't, I get upset. I make them do it again. How then can I turn to Hashem and say, Hashem, could you please overlook the things that I did wrong? But if I myself exercise forgiveness, I'm always understanding of the failings of others, that people aren't perfect and don't always do things perfectly. So then Hashem says, that's the way you act, that's the way you behave, so therefore I will do the same. Another famous passage in the Gemara, Kol ha'rachem al habrios, merachmin olav min hashamayim. Person who has mercy towards people. So Hashem is mercy towards them. The Gemara learns it from a pasuk, from the verse by Ira Nidachat. Hashem will give you mercy. He will give you mercy when you exercise mercy. A person who's merciful and compassionate, when they turn to Hashem and ask Hashem to behave towards them according to a value which they themselves practice, it is so much more valuable. And so we can take it one step further. If it's true about one who is forgiving, Mavir al Midosov, if it's true about someone who's merachim, who's merciful, it may also be true about the chos, about the one who values. Can we turn to Hashem and say, Hashem, value us. We're something. We're worthy. We're a creature of yours. There must be a value in us. Otherwise, you wouldn't have created us and you wouldn't have sustained us until this day. Hashem, please value us and therefore renew our lease on life. What would make that plea so much more effective would be if we valued others as well. If we look at people and we say, wow, look at them. They're creatures of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're beings which Hashem saw fit to bring into this world. They must really be worth something. They must really be worthy. I should study, I should learn, I should get to know, get to understand better. What is the value of this person? What can I gain from this person? What this person adds to the mix. You know, in a sense, we've all had a little bit, I shouldn't say a little bit, a major gift in this area over the past 6 months. The period of the coronavirus, where we have had so much enforced isolation from each other, and to a significant degree, continue to have. It has certainly produced an appreciation of each other, of how much we value each other, how much we value family members that we may not have been able to get together with, parents, children not living in our homes, how much we value our friends who we would spend time together in close quarters, joining together for su'udot, for meals, and for all kinds of opportunities. How much we value community, being together with others in shul all the time. Hine matov umanoim shevet achim gam yachad. How good, how pleasant it is to be able to be together. It's a slogan, a kumbaya song that people sing, almost trite. But have we ever, in our experience, developed a more profound appreciation for this? It's one of the gifts of this very, very difficult time, one of the silver linings in this great cloud, that while we've had less of each other, we've had the inevitable result, absence making the heart grow fonder. We appreciate something only when it's taken away from us. All of those normal human failings, but in the end, we have this deeper and more profound appreciation for others for those others. I know that some people have spoken about the value that they found davening at home alone. How sometimes when they daven b'tzibur, when they daven together with the community, they have to worry about everybody else's pace that they have to keep up with. At home, they were able to do it on their own. There are all the distractions of the presence of others, which they were free of, perhaps at home. There was the self-consciousness of how they behave in front of others, which they have in shul, which at home it was just lifnei miata omeid, it was only them and the Rabbanu Shalom. And of course, that is something to be admired. The greater spirituality which people were able to find. But we have to keep something in mind in terms of what is really the value of a shul. It's an interesting question, and if we were together in a room, I would ask it with a show of hands perhaps, or with volunteers for an answer. What's the significance of davening in shul? What's the great value of davening in shul as opposed to davening in our own home? I think that with a survey, if we would ask this with a survey of knowledgeable people, the general consensus answer would be because the shul is Beit Hashem, it's the house of Hashem. When you have a minyan, so Shechinta Sharya, Hashem is present there. At home, not as much. It's not the house of God. We go to shul, we have a minyan, we have the presence of Hashem, we have the home of Hashem. And therefore, we're davening in the presence of Hashem. And indeed, the Gemara says this. Ein minayin shakadosh baruch hu matzui bebeit hakneset shenemer Elokim nitzav b'adat kel. Uminayin la'asora shemitpalalim sheshchina imayim shenemer Elokim nitzav b'adat kel. God is there in the community of God, in the Beit Knesset, with the minyan. And therefore, of course, there's a value to being in a minyan because you have a greater presence of Hashem. But it is worth noting that that's not the first reason the Gemara says. That's not the first reason, primary reason that the Gemara gives as to the value of being in shul. The first reason it gives is, Abba Binyamin said, Ein tfilaso shel adam nishmas ela bebeis hakneses shenemar lishmoa el arina ve'la tefila. To listen to the song and to the tefillah, b'mokom rina sham tehe tefillah. It is in the place of song that there is tefillah. And Rashi says, in the Beit Knesset, Shesham Omrim Hatzibur Shiros V'Sishpachos B'Neimas Kol Arev. That's where the Tzibur joins their voices together in a choral symphony to raise their voice in prayer. The power of the Beit Knesset is because of the community's joined voices raised together. As beautifully and as spiritually as we could pray at home alone, we don't have the value of community. And the first value is what we call it. We don't call it Beit Hashem. We call it Beit Knesset, a place of assembly, a place where a community is formed, where a community joins. Spirituality, sensing Hashem, is a wonderful thing. It's a tall order. There's a magnificent idea which is taught by the Maharal of Prague in the beginning of the Sefer Netzach Yisrael in the 4th chapter, where the Maharal speaks about the difference between the first Beit HaMikdash and the second. The first Beit HaMikdash, as we know, had a greater explicit spirituality. It was having Nevuah, it had the Urim V'Tumim, it had the Aron, the Luchos, it had the 5 elements that the Gemara lists in Masechet Yoma. And the first Beit HaMikdash was destroyed on account of the 3 Averot Chamurot, the 3 most serious sins, the 3 cardinal sins, Gilui Arayos, Shfichus Damim, and Avodah Zarah. The second Beit HaMikdash, which was a shadow of the first, which didn't have those things, was destroyed because of Sinat Chinam, because of the failure of community. The Maharal explained that it is because the first Beit HaMikdash was one which had in it a tangible spirituality, a tangible presence of Hashem. What destroyed that Mikdash were 3 Averos, each of which is called Tumah, is called impurity, something which can't coexist with the presence of Hashem. When we were overwhelmed with the Tumah of Arayos, with the Tumah of shvichut damim, of murder, with the tumah of avodah zarah, all of which are rendered impurity, are called that way. So then the presence of Hashem couldn't be there anymore. But the second Beit HaMikdash was not defined by its spirituality, by the presence of Hashem. The visible, tangible elements of the presence of Hashem weren't there. What made the second Beit HaMikdash so special, so distinct, was simply that it was the place around which the Jewish people assembled. The one Mikdash, the one temple that we all went to. The Mikdash was an assembly point. And so, what undermined it, what destroyed it? Not dramatic averos rendered tumah impurity, but sinat chinam, a failure of community, a failure of connection. That's what the second Beis HaMikdash was, a place of togetherness. And so we can perhaps say, Kal v'chomer ben beno shel kal v'chomer. If we would say that the second Beit Mikdash was not a place of tangible spirituality, that its main power was the power of community, would we not say the same thing, that much more so, about our Batei Knesset? Of course they're a Beit Hashem. Of course in prayer we're supposed to strive to sense and to perceive Hashem. But to some degree, as in Bayit Sheni, the channel to that is through an awareness of the value of each other, of the image of God that's sitting next to you, of the greatness, the value in being part of a community, in recognizing each other and seeing each other. That's what we yearn for. That's the value of the Beit Knesset. It's not something to belittle. It's not just, so to speak, an American thing, but better that a shul should just be a place to come, to daven, and to run. The power of the Beit Knesset, the Gemara says, is because it's a mokom of rina. It's a place where voices are raised together in song. It's a place of community, of coming together, of valuing each other. To value each other, to value each other. We turn to Hashem and we say, Chus berachem aleinu. Have compassion, value us. We want Hashem to use a standard of valuing us. We start with our valuing of each other. One of the gifts of our time, that we can cherish that now more than ever. Let's extend it one final step. The beautiful sound in a shul is a sound of people singing together in a Beit Knesset. There's also another structure of community, which is part of the infrastructure of a Jewish community. Sometimes it's the same as the first, and that's the sound of the Beit Midrash, the house of study. A Beit Midrash, a house of study, as we know, is not an academic library. It's not characterized by a hush, by silence. The beautiful music of the Beit Midrash, the ra'ash, the noise of the Beit Midrash, is the cacophony of voices, of people arguing with each other on havayot Abaye v'Rava, on the questions and answers, the give and take that is alive and well in a Beit Midrash. Hearing the voices of each other, arguing with each other. Rav Nechunya ben Hakana taught in the Mishnah in Brachos the prayer we would say when we entered the Beit Midrash. We prayed about those arguments. We prayed that those arguments wouldn't be to win. Shlo ekoshel bidvar halacha b'yismechu b'chavero. Shlo ekoshel dvar b'chavero bidvar halacha v'esmach ani bohem. I don't want to make a mistake and my friends will rejoice. I don't want my friends to make a mistake and have me rejoice. I'm not trying to win the argument. I don't want them to be trying to win the argument. I want with them to work, to be able to arrive at the truth. The music of the Beit Midrash is created by conflicting voices. The music of tefillah is a music of harmonized voices, singing together. The music of the Beit Midrash is the music of contrasting voices, but voices which are not raised to argue to win, but the voices which are raised to argue to clarify, to come to truth. Can I share with you the magnificent words of Rav Chaim Volozhiner in the 3rd chapter of Pirkei Avot in his commentary Ruach Chaim, where the Mishnah indeed speaks about the beauty of people being together learning, and quotes the verse with which we began, "Az nidbru yirei Hashem isha re'eu, vayakshev Hashem vayishma vayikatev sefer zikaron lefanav." Yes, he quotes, the Mishnah quotes that verse in order to underscore the value, the great value of people being together to study Torah. The verse in Malachi, the last prophet. And Rav Chaim Volozhiner writes as follows. He says, isn't it interesting that it says nidberu? Nidberu, what does that mean? Nifal, they were spoken to? As dibru yirei Hashem isharayeu. They spoke to each other. What's the meaning of the term nidberu? Wrote Rav Chaim, lo amru dibru ki im nidberu. Kol echad yilmedu yachad l'shem shamayim. If they learn together for the sake of heaven, what we don't understand, our friend will help us understand. I'm not there to speak, to hear the sound of my own voice. I'm more interested in what my friend has to say, that I could hear it, that I could absorb it, that I could make it part of myself. Everyone is spoken to by his friend. That's the purpose of coming together. That's the ultimate expression of value for another. I value their perspective. I value their opinion. I don't reject it. I don't cast it away. I appreciate it. I learn from it. It's beautiful. But listen to the finishing touch of Rav Chaim. In the Medrash it concludes and it says, and it's in this merit that Hashem listens to his prayer. The Medrash says it's not just Hashem overhearing the conversation and writing it down, but Hashem will listen to this person, period. He'll listen to everything this person has to say. He'll listen to the person's prayers. It's measure for measure. Because the person made their ear like a funnel, listening to what others had to say. When I'm a listener, when I value what somebody else has to say, and then I knock on Hashem's door, and I say, Hashem, I want to speak to you. Shema koleinu, listen to my voice. Hashem says, of course I'll listen to you. You spend your life listening closely to others. I want to hear what you have to say. One who shuts their ears to what others have to say. One who's always right and never needs to listen to others. Hashem should listen to them. Hashem should listen to them. L'kach HaKadosh Baruch Hu gam kein shomei tfilaso. Shema koleinu Hashem Elokeinu, chus v'rachem aleinu. A verse, a phrase of Teshuva, with the Aron Kodesh open. Listen to our voice, Hashem, our God. Value us, have mercy on us. Yes, of course, we ask Hashem for his mercy, which we need so badly and so significantly. But we also ask him, chus, to value us. To value us. He created us. He didn't want to see Nineveh go to waste. He doesn't want to see us go to waste. We have value. To tell Hashem that we have value, we must believe in that value. We must see the significance within ourselves of what difference we can make, of our potential to accomplish great things, of the worthiness of refining ourselves even further because of our value. Then we can turn to Hashem and ask Hashem to value us. But in the world of Midah Keneged Midah, we value each other. And boy, do we value each other. Haven't we learned the hard way how to value the people around us? How difficult it is to be separated, to be alone. How we value coming together as a community, coming together, raising our voices together in song with people who are like us, that we harmonize each other perfectly. The value of our family, the value of our friends, the value of each other. If we value others, then we can, with a straight face, go to Hashem and say, Hashem, people are valuable. Value us, value me as well. And Shema Koleinu. when we value others for their contrasting voice, when we don't want to just speak to the like-minded, but we want to conduct that vigorous conversation of the Beis Medrash, understanding that we won't arrive at the truth by dibru, by what we have to say, but we will more likely arrive at the truth by nidbru, by hearing the wisdom of others together with us, each and every one of us. Nidbru yirei Hashem yishorehu, to be spoken to be listeners, to be humble and want to learn and want to gain. Vayakshev Hashem vayishma, when Hashem sees that we value what others have to say, Hashem says, that's a person whose voice I want to hear. Shema koleinu Hashem Elokeinu, chus b'rachem aleinu. There's such relevance to this tshuva, to value ourselves, to value each other, to cherish the conflicting voices, to listen to the voices of others. Hashem will listen to us. Hashem will value us. May this gathering, magnificent gathering, virtual, but no less magnificent, of Yirei Hashem, speaking to each other, listening to each other, working together to refine ourselves, to grow ourselves. May Hashem see it, scribble furiously in the Sefer Zikaron about what he sees. May he see us, hear us, and value us. May we be zochet to a Teshuva shalema and to geula karova b'mheira b'yameinu. Gmar chatima tova.
Hey, you know the OU symbol? You know, from chocolates on Coca-Cola and so many other products. But what actually is OUisrael? We begin our journey in Yerushalayim, the holy city. Here at the OUisrael Center is where it all happens.
The OUisrael Center really provides a community center for English speakers from all over the world. So throughout the year we have an incredible activities from early in the morning to late at night.
The Leah Women's Initiative is a program designed for women to be able to find spirituality, to take time to learn Torah, to become closer to Hashem.
Smichas Chaver program is the fastest growing practical halacha chabura in the entire world. We started a year ago in 2 locations. We're now in close to 30 locations. A program that is created for working balabatim. They're coming home every single week with questions and answers that they can engage their family, all the practical halachas that they need to know to be a yid in their house.
OUisrael, Judaism, Zionism, responsibility.